Morning. Good morning. Good morning. Can I get a good morning? Good morning. That was pretty good. Can I get one more? Loud. Thank you. The Ruth Bader Ginsburg swimsuit is a true story, and I actually wore it underneath one of my suits for my last speaking event. So it doesn't just have to be a swimsuit. There's lots of uses for it. Thank you all. I'm so happy to be here, and what an incredible room this early in the morning. Very inspiring. As was mentioned, I launched the Phenomenal Woman Action Campaign about a year ago, and it's been a wild ride, to say the least, and I've been really just blown away and humbled by the enthusiasm and engagement that we've seen here in San Francisco and across the country, and I'm really excited to tell you more about that story and how anyone in this room, everyone in this room, can do what I did. But before I get to that, I just want to say a quick note, which is people often ask me, what is the best part of the Phenomenal Woman campaign and having launched that. And I have to say that it is being in rooms like this with bold, brave, incredible women leaders and men who support women leaders and male allies like all of you that are in this room. So thank you for being here. I'm really excited to be a part of San Francisco's first ever WELL conference. And I want to do everything in my power to help you this morning really believe that any of us can have impact, big or small, even if it's not your career aspiration or your full-time job. Thanks to digital platforms and other tools, you can start a movement, and I'm living proof of that. So just a little background about me. I happen to be a lawyer by training, and I've worked in corporate law and in tech companies for most of my career, but politics has always been my passion. So in 2008, I joined a long-shot presidential campaign of a young senator with a funny name, and someone who had a remarkable vision for our country. Helping Barack Obama win the White House was my first experience in politics, and it was exciting. It was a very formative moment for me in my young professional life, and it, as we all know, awakened an entire generation of Americans like me to the possibilities of political engagement. And of course, those of us who cried tears of joy on election night in 2008 cried very different tears in 2016 when our country moved in a radically different direction. But if anything, I'll say I think the awakening we have seen since 2016 has in many ways been more profound. I was at an event here in San Francisco a few months ago with Latifah Simon and Gloria Steinem. And Gloria Steinem, the feminist icon, said that she had never seen anything like this. And I was like, wait, say that again? You've never seen, this woman, right? She has seen everything in terms of feminist movements, and she said she had never seen anything like it. And she's not just talking about the United States, right? I've been, don't get me wrong, I've been really excited to see this wave of political activism sweep across the United States, where we have a record number of women running for office at all levels, but the U.S. is just the beginning. So a few months ago, I'm sure many of you know, Ireland voted to make abortion legal by a margin of roughly 2-1. All around us, the Me Too movement has really forced this global reckoning and finally is bringing predators to justice. And in recent weeks, up until last night when I was in Washington, D.C., through today and through the weekend, we are seeing millions of Americans who are standing up, speaking out, and making their voices heard in opposition to the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But my point is that clearly this isn't an isolated moment, right? This is truly a global movement, and I believe that we are witnessing history, and this movement is here to stay. But that doesn't mean it's always obvious what we can do to drive progress. And I'm talking about people like us, not CEOs or politicians, but ordinary people living their lives. And let's face it, the barriers to entry are pretty high. I think there's a huge gap between Run for Something, which is the name of an incredible organization that encourages millennials to run for office, and just do something. Just do something, do anything, right? And I'm willing to bet that for every person with the time and resources to actually make that leap to run for office, there are about a dozen more who identify with a woman who wrote to the New York Times recently, earlier this year, and said that she's been outraged, like so many of us, by what is going on in the United States since Trump took office, but she is struggling to summon a response. And she wondered, I quote, "Are we going to look back at this moment in history and say, darn, we could have resisted, but we were really swamped that weekend with brunch plans?" I mean, I like brunch too, right? But Professor Roxane Gay, who's also a columnist at the Times, wrote back to say that she and millions of others actually felt the exact same way. And her advice was really simple. She said, if I focus on just one issue and apply genuine effort and attention to it, she wrote, I just might contribute something useful. In other words, you don't have to drop your career plans or even your brunch plans and walk away from your regular life or run for office to make a real difference. Not everybody has to make that big leap, but you have to do something. We all have to do something. And I firmly believe that. I think if we really hope to unleash the full potential of this global movement, the most important thing we can do is to meet people where they are. For some people, that absolutely may mean the ballot box. For others, it might be your kid's school. It might be a neighborhood park. It might be a place of worship. It could be the grocery aisle. To give you a little more background on me, I grew up in a social justice family, which is how I refer to it, which means I learned at a very young age what everyday acts of activism look like and what that can achieve. One of my earliest memories is going to the grocery store with my grandmother and her explaining to me why we were not allowed to buy grapes. It was 1988, and Cesar Chavez was fasting to call attention to the plight of farm workers and their families. I was 4 years old, and that is when I learned a new vocabulary word, boycott. In addition to some other choice words my grandmother liked to use, like misogynist, which feels really relevant nowadays, doesn't it? And you know, my grandmother was no stranger to protests and political rallies, but she was really a great example of living out everyday acts of resistance. Her activism wasn't confined to the grocery aisle. In fact, quite the opposite. It was present in every single thing she did. She was bold, she was brave, and she taught me I should always make an impact. Always, big or small. So right after the election in 2016, I started small. I took her advice and I started small. I launched a Pantsuit Drive as a way to honor Hillary Clinton's public service while supporting organizations that connect poor and homeless women with job opportunities. I'm sure you all remember Pantsuit Nation, and some folks bought new pantsuits for election night, and I thought, what a privilege that is. Why don't we use this in this moment to give back? And so we started a clothing drive. And then after inauguration, you all will remember that President Trump issued a travel ban and targeted people from Muslim countries coming to the United States. So I spent, the travel ban came out on a Friday, I believe. I spent that entire Sunday camped out at SFO to help defend some of the 90,000 people who were targeted. All day I coordinated lawyers, volunteer lawyers coming to the airport, and I was posting updates on Twitter and Facebook, and so many people wrote back saying, what can I do to help? What can I do? I want to be involved. And my first suggestion was donate to the International Refugee Assistance Project with whom we were working. And you know how people reacted? Some people said, great, I'll donate right away. But more often than not, the response was, I already did that. And I've already donated to the ACLU, and I've already done this. Like, I want to do more. Can I bring in and out to the airport? Can I bring water? What else can I do? And I was blown away. I really had never seen anything like that. Certainly not since '08 when I was on the Obama campaign. And then the past 2 weeks happened. Today happened. And wow, I'm trying not to get emotional because it's been a tough 2 weeks. Like millions of Americans, I was so moved and inspired by Dr. Ford, her courage, her patriotism, her incredible strength, even in the face of death threats. And despite the fact that, as we know, the Republican Party wanted her to shut up and go away. Naturally, she made me think of Anita Hill. Right? 27 years ago, Anita Hill faced a similar ordeal when she too came forward to hold a powerful man accountable. And back then, 1,600 black women came together and showed their support by taking out a full-page ad in the New York Times. And so last week, inspired by those phenomenal women, those 1,600 black women, we launched a grassroots effort to mobilize 1,600 male allies, so to get men to speak up and to stand up. And so we raised $100,000 to purchase another full-page ad in hopes of sending Dr. Ford and all survivors the same message of support and solidarity. And we only had a few days before the hearing. If you guys remember, we thought the hearing was going to be on Monday. We launched the campaign on Thursday. So I wasn't totally sure we would pull it off. Well, I take that back. I knew we were going to do it, but I did not think I was going to sleep at all over those 3 days. But you know, as with the travel ban, the response was incredibly overwhelming. In less than a week, we raised more than enough to take out the ad. We launched a travel fund to send survivors to DC to tell their stories. We even took over the New York Times homepage on NewYorkTimes.com. So you were seeing reports from the hearing and seeing these headlines, and above it you see this huge banner ad that says, "We believe Anita Hill, we believe Christine Blasey Ford." And we didn't just get 1,600 men to sign on. So far we've gathered over 13,000 signatures, nearly 10 times our original goal, and we're still fighting, right? We need to continue to support Dr. Ford and make sure everyone's voice can be heard in this process, no matter what Mitch McConnell or those Republican senators have to say about it. And so for me, the takeaways are really pretty simple. Digital platforms can be powerful tools for making a difference in the world. And every action you take, no matter how small, has the potential to have impact, real impact. And the best part is you don't actually have to go viral to make a difference, right? I mean, it definitely helps, but I will never forget the sense of solidarity I felt at the airport at SFO during the Muslim ban. I was sitting on the floor right outside that Starbucks in the international terminal, and I was juggling my cell phone and my laptop, and since I had a baby at the time, it was my older daughter was a baby and was breastfeeding, I was actually using my jacket for cover while I pumped. I literally did not have enough time to like run to the bathroom and come right back, so I just did it right there on the floor of that airport. And somehow I felt really comfortable doing that. And it was in an unusually crowded public space. I mean, there were people everywhere. And it wasn't until later that I realized why, and it's that a huge percentage of the protesters and nearly all of the volunteer lawyers who I worked with were women. I was surrounded by women. And it wasn't just San Francisco. This was actually happening all across the country where women were coming out in full force. Everywhere you looked, women were stepping up and doing what they could with the skills and time that they had to lead the resistance while juggling their lives and careers and everything else. And for months after that moment, after Trump's election, I kept thinking of my favorite Maya Angelou poem, which returns again and again to the same refrain. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. And a lot of people know Maya Angelou as this iconic author and poet, but she also was a fierce and fearless advocate, a true pioneer of the civil rights movement and activist. She was friends with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And the more I thought about Maya the activist, that poem, that line, and the energy and engagement around me, it started to feel more like a rallying cry. I'm a woman, phenomenally, phenomenal woman, that's me. So when friends told me they were going to the Women's March, which unfortunately I didn't attend because I had a little baby at home, I had an idea, you know, what could I do to contribute to that? And so I made a handful of t-shirts, 20 or so, that say phenomenal woman across the chest. And during the march, they got a lot of compliments. I thought, all right, maybe we'll make a few more. So last year on International Women's Day, we launched the Phenomenal Woman Action Campaign, and the plan was to sell the Phenomenal Woman t-shirts to celebrate Women's History Month and raise money for great organizations like Girls Who Code and Planned Parenthood. And I figured maybe we would sell a couple hundred t-shirts if I pestered enough family and friends, but it turned out I was way off. So on the day that we launched, we actually sold 2,500 t-shirts. And after extending the campaign from 1 month to 3 months, we sold over 10,000 t-shirts. So we'd clearly tapped into something, right? It wasn't just this one moment. And so we didn't stop there. Over the course of a year, we built a digital audience of over 286 million. We received support from lots of different celebrities, such as Serena Williams and Jessica Alba. And as we speak, we're deepening our engagement with women professionals. So we started a tech tour at every major company in Silicon Valley with fireside chats and community engagements to highlight women in leadership. And today, more than a year and a half later, and over 30,000 shirts into what started as a 1-month campaign, it's clear that this isn't just a moment. We truly tapped into a movement that goes way beyond t-shirts. It goes, in my mind, beyond getting women elected. I mean, we're sure as hell gonna do that too, but it's about helping all women feel engaged and empowered. And most of all, it's about looking to the future. I do think it's not enough to sort of categorically state the future is female. Don't get me wrong, the future is female. I believe that it will be, but only if the fight is female right here, right now in 2018. And so, given the successes that we've had with Phenomenal Woman, I'm often asked how we did it and what the secret formula is. And the answer, and the big secret, is that there is no secret formula, right? All you have to do is look for those opportunities to do what my grandmother taught me. Always make an impact, always, big or small. Or just follow that advice from Roxane Gay from the New York Times. Focus on just one issue and apply genuine effort and attention to it. And I would actually take that a step further and say engage as deeply as possible on whichever issue you may choose. Learn it inside out. Become a subject matter expert in that issue area. I mean, what better way in this era of fake news to influence people and convince them to get involved than to really know an issue inside out? So I know I said that there's a big leap between run for something and just do something, but the secret is that when you start really small, when you focus on the difference that you can make today, you never know where that discrete act of civic engagement will take you. I never intended to start a movement. I almost feel kind of weird saying that I started a movement, right? It was supposed to be this little digital campaign that lasted a month, but it kept going, and we kept thinking about how can we grow it. And I firmly believe that even in terms of the folks in this room, just that act of buying a $35 t-shirt and knowing that it supports women's organizations and then posting about it on Instagram and talking about feminism and women's equality, that is an act of activism. That is an act of speaking up and speaking out and using your voice in a powerful way. And when you inspire other people to do that, when you take 1,600 men who inspire 13,000 people, you've created real power to elevate an entire community, to amplify the impact of those around you, and maybe even spark a movement. So I'll close by saying I firmly believe that every single person in this room has the ability to start a Phenomenal Woman campaign. We are in such a critical moment in our country today, tomorrow, as we go into 2018 and 2020, and it's not going to stop. And you want to be able to look back and think about what you did in this moment and feel proud of that and know that any act of civic engagement makes a difference. So I hope you will get out there, use your voice, and stand up for survivors, for women, and the issues you care about. Thank you so much.